We live in a post-billiards age, a confusing statement if you weren't alive during the period of time in which billiards was a pervasive and highly celebrated parlor game. What I mean to say is that compared to its height in the 1900s, billiards is a relatively dead game. To give you some context, in Chicago during the 1920s, there were over 800 pool halls. Today, there are just 10. However, something as quintessential as billiards was to the human experience in its time is bound to leave a mark. And boy, did it. But before we can understand what billiards did for the modern world, it is my opinion that we need to understand how it did what it did. Let me take you back to the 20th century, straight to the storyboard of a man named Michael Phelan. Michael Phelan was one of the biggest of the big names in billiards. A swanky, Rockefeller-looking guy, plenty of money, and plenty of ideas on how to improve the things that made him money. He was an incredible player, a focused and driven entrepreneur, and most importantly, organized the biggest of the big money games in billiards. Imagine, if you will, the Kentucky Derby of billiards, and you'll have close to an idea of the kind of big money matchups Phelan was putting together regularly. There was a problem with these matchups, however. Billiard balls. Enter one of the biggest causes of elephant poaching in world history. In the 1920s, billiard balls were made of one solid piece of ivory. Not just any ivory either. No, it was only the finest quality of ivory. Matter of fact, the highest quality of ivory was actually named billiard ball ivory. In order to make one set of billiard balls, at least 2 full-grown elephants would need to be killed. As you can imagine, this was rather expensive. Phelan believed that in order to further popularize the game of billiards, he had to standardize the equipment the game was being played with. And not only did he want to standardize it, he wanted to make it affordable. He wanted to find a substance that would mimic the physical properties of ivory, the way the balls rebounded off one another and interacted with other game elements, without the scarcity or tediousness of fashioning the ivory into balls. Phelan put out a call to inventors, offering $10,000 to anyone who could offer him what he was seeking. And to give you some context for that number, that's around $250,000 in today's money. The power of the radio in the 1920s was an amazing thing. Almost 3,000 miles away, in a small printing firm in the state of New York, a very interesting man in very particular circumstances caught wind of Phelan's offer, a man by the name of John Wesley Hyatt. Now, Hyatt was a tinkerer, not an inventor. He was actually a printer by trade. However, just like any backyard chemist of his time, he was trying to eke out a fortune in the booming market of chemical innovations. And Phelan had given him the perfect opportunity. As a printer, Hyatt often worked with a substance called nitrated cellulose. Nitrated cellulose was used to protect printers' fingers and hands during the printing process, and is still used today in liquid bandages. Hyatt noticed very interesting properties in the substance, particularly the fact that, when dissolved, the substance created a kind of viscous and syrupy liquid that could be shaped or made into a thin layer over other surfaces. The substance he discovered was one of the most important chemical compounds of the last 200 years. It was the first ever plastic, and he named it celluloid. Over the course of the 1920s and beyond, the use of celluloid exploded. Hyatt started a company with his brother Isaiah Hyatt, making celluloid dental plates for false teeth. Soon after this, the duo would start the Celluloid Manufacturing Company, where they would manufacture mass quantities of inexpensive toys and imitation luxury goods. Celluloid was a hit. It could be fashioned into any shape, with any texture, and because it was a translucent white material, could be cleverly dyed to mimic numerous other materials. The one thing cellulose couldn't do, it seemed, was win Phelan's prize money. Although celluloid could be fashioned into balls and combined with other materials for a passable substitute, the material just couldn't perform up to par with ivory. The big mark celluloid did leave, however, was humanity's initiation into the now wildly important field of polymer sciences. So now you have the full story. A story with roots in glamour and panache, sent via a web of copper wires over a span of 3,000 miles to the humble beginnings of our modern society. A story to which our first aid blankets, weather-resistant clothing, lightweight assault rifles, insulation, plumbing, vinyl records, trains, planes, cars, films, and even the device you're watching this on owe quite a debt. Thank you, and I hope you have a beautiful life.